Hi, I'm Elizabeth Cornwell.
And I'm Rick Wingrove, and with us today is Jamila Bey, a journalist for 16 years and the host of Sex, Politics, and Religion Hour on Voice of Russia Radio. Today we're talking about skepticism. So how about skepticism?
Skepticism in the media. I mean, being a journalist for 16 years, you've seen quite a bit. The rise of CNN and the 24-hour-a-day media news and so on.
Remember, you could watch the news without having to read a crawl underneath and alerts popping up and being told to go to hashtag this word. And, you know, it's the reports of the demise of journalism are greatly exaggerated. We know this. We know that there are those of us who are trained to go into a situation, suss out what's going on, and really do the best we can do with what we have to bring it back to people. This week gets a big asterisk. I don't know what the holy blank happened up in Boston, but...
You're talking about subject in custody.
Okay, let's stop. Put a pin on that. You hold on that.
Yeah.
There was also 12 dead when it was 2, and then the third one later. There was also the Saudi national who was being questioned as a person of interest. There was, you know, the 2 olive-colored young boys who were called the bagmen in the New York Post. I hope that their grandchildren get free college educations with at least the settlement that comes out of that. You know, these. One of the kids is a runner, a track athlete himself who wanted to watch the marathon. And next thing, he's afraid to go outside because he's been accused of being the bomber by a legitimate news organization.
Journalism by social media.
Yeah, you know,
gone bad.
Gone bad, you know, gone bad. That we do see the potential of it. We do see the fact that people are able to say, okay, well, I've got a bunch of pictures of this street. Let's see what I've got. But the thing is, the story is still in process. We're still figuring out what's going on. The news leads that actually wound up being something were people who were on the scene. You know, somebody in the hospital talking to FBI agents saying, look at my film again, after they'd gotten home and were out of the city of Boston. Look at what I've sent you again. I think I've got a picture of your guy. The bottom line here, though, is number one, journalists fell down, or I don't even think you can call some of these people journalists, but for the sake of the argument of this conversation, journalists really fell down. They fell down so hard they bounced twice before coming to arrest. Number two, everyone, and it's a shame that we have to call people who consume news consumers. There was a time when we were Americans, we were citizens, we were learning about our democracy, and personally, I still believe that the work I do has a role in keeping this democracy strong. There is a reason that the Fourth Estate exists. Again, asterisks next to this week. Everything that you're supposed to do. If your mother says you love her, or no, I didn't even get that right. Let me edit. See, that's why editors are necessary. If your mother says she loves you, check it out. We need people to be more critical of the news they consume. And it's not that hard. It's stuff that little kids ask. How do you know that? Prove it. Those are things that anyone can say, okay, in custody, show us you don't have, what do you have? Okay, one person saying it's a dark-skinned person. Well, okay. Oh, now it's a brown-skinned person. That's dark as brown? Okay, fine. How come we don't have a name? How come we don't have any other detail? Why are other news organizations coming out saying our people are not confirming this? There were a number of things that were wrong, and you know, common sense did end up prevailing in a few of these cases. But then there are still things we don't know. I gotta admit, this particular weekend I've really taken a break, and I've not been as involved in reading stuff out of Boston as I was during the week and as I will be in the coming week. But they robbed a 7-Eleven oops, wait, never mind. You know,
that to me was probably the most bizarre aspect of all the things that happened on Friday and Saturday. It was bizarre enough when we thought they had robbed a 7-Eleven to start their day, and then it was even more bizarre to find out they hadn't actually. You got to think the bizarre coincidence that fell on them and probably instigated this whole thing.
While the city's on
In
lockdown,
Boston.
The thing, I mean, a couple of things have changed a lot in news media, and that is it's become entertainment. They're competing. It used to be the news was on at 6 o'clock and then again at 10 o'clock, and you watched that segment of news, and then you read the paper in the morning, and that's how people got their news. And now we have these, you know, MSNBC, we've got, of course, CNN started the whole thing off, the 24-hour-a-day news, it constantly gets repeated. What I was surprised at with what was going on in Boston, I mean, here we had this horrible tragedy in Texas, in West Texas, and none of that was being covered. And, you know, a number of people killed in that and were missing. Very, very tragic. But it was as if there was no news going on in the rest of the world. You don't see this in other countries, at least the countries I've been in and watching the news. You don't see that news stories only focus on one thing and then that's it. Here we've got, you know, during this time, North Korea, we still don't know what's going on there. This you know, nut is talking about, you know, sending out missiles and he's not going to give us any warning. I want to hear about that. I'm much more concerned about North Korea than I am about the you know, these two young men who, you know, set off bombs in Boston. Yes, I want them caught. I want to find out what really went on. But there's a lot of other things going on in the news that I'm very, very concerned about.
Yeah.
And
you get the
it was
impression there's one
news story and the rest of the world just stops.
Not like there was a 7.5 earthquake in China that killed hundreds of people.
Right. The huge earthquake.
11,000 wounded.
Yeah.
Last count.
Yeah.
And that gets a snippet, or, you know, what's going on in the Senate, what's going on in Congress. I mean, unless there's a sex scandal, we hardly, or a fiscal cliff, we don't hear anything. So there's this entertainment factor, and you know, tell me if you think you agree or disagree with this. To me, it just seems like there's this entertainment factor that they have to compete with one another. And if one of them's carrying this story, they're all going to carry the story. And none of them are going to divert because they feel they may lose audience going to the other channel to find out what's going on with the one story.
News is incredibly expensive to produce. It has to go on every day, at least. You've got to have your writers, you've got to have your producers, you absolutely need your editors, whether or not they're funded or whatnot. And when laws changed such that local jurisdictions could be served by the same media outlet, you didn't have to have competition between the paper and the television and the radio. Oh, look at me, I'm still doing the radio. Oh, I'm so old. You also saw the demise of the idea that the tally sheet wasn't something that the news people knew about. I'm a reporter. I don't know how much I'm spending to do my journalism for the benefit of my community. I'm a reporter. I don't know what sponsors are thinking about not sponsoring us anymore because I keep doing stories about this particular thing. Again, not me personally, just in general, the way journalism has been. And when journalism got turned into a commodity, into something that could earn money, into something that had to be accountable for its expenditures I mean, you know, of course you can't have 7 producers for a 30-second feel-good story about a spelling bee. No, but within reason. We're not seeing science covered the way it needs to be. We're not seeing our Senate covered the way it's supposed to be, let alone the House of Representatives with, you know, hundreds of members, and most people can barely remember who their own rep is. I come from D.C., well, actually, I come from Pittsburgh, go Steelers, but I live in D.C. And, you know, just the lack of civic understanding. Our Americans are graduating from high school not understanding what exactly their judicial system, how it works, what it means, and how it affects them. So, you know, we have elections and people go, oh, well, Americans are just, oh, they're just, you know, apathetic and they don't care and they don't know and, you know, they are not interested because the reporters aren't giving them what they want. It all goes hand in hand. There is some truth to the fact that people are probably not going to watch long exposés about the paper trail that led to particular legislation. However, when you talk about, here's why you don't have a job anymore. Why is unemployment in this particular community this percentage? Well, let's look at what laws went into place to make it so that these corporations could move here or there, or this industry has been deregulated, so you now have competition. Let's look at why this particular, I don't know, public utility provider that keeps going dark in the summertime isn't serving its people, but now you have these smaller companies that are. There are a lot of ways to do it, and it's not about a liberal slant or a conservative slant. A fact is a fact is a fact. And we've gotten away from, and this comes from somebody who works in opinion journalism, but we've gotten away from, here's what we know, here's what we're going to say about it. Mm-hmm. We don't know this, I'm not saying that. We've gotten away from that, and it's such a cult of personality that there are people who are talking heads, some of them very good. They come from a particular political ideology or business ideology, and they put forth their ideas. But there needs to be the people who go, okay, prove it. I understand that's what you are saying, but there's a whole body of research that disputes what you're saying. Are you sure it is so? Hold on, I've done the research. Okay, I've read your report. These 3 universities all refute your latest research, and, you know, respectfully so. You're the only one saying this. I understand you've got a book that's out, but help me understand where the science is. We don't ask where the money is, like, who is benefiting financially from a particular thing.
Like cigarette research in the 60s.
You know, okay, there's about to be a pipeline from Canada to Mexico, and there are a lot of people protesting it. It's going to bring jobs. It's going to bring pollution. There's a lot of news coming out of that. What does the average person know?
Not much.
Well, we see on social media that there are parts of Arkansas where there's standing pools of oil that were supposed to be water, and we go, oh, down with this. Do you know any of the science behind it? What makes the oil come up in people's backyards? Why didn't that happen before? What's making it so? Is that really oil? Is that really a picture of the protest you say it's a picture of? Are these congressmen really just giving away all of this stuff to businesses? Are there businesses that are really not protecting their workers? If you just sit down and put yourself in the mind of a really annoying 7-year-old who can ask more than why, who can ask how, who can ask who, and you also say, tell me about money, there's always money involved, let me ask some better questions, you become a better news consumer. I hate considering people as news consumers.
But that was the big mistake, making news corporations answer to their advertisers, basically, or to the bottom line.
I don't know if it can ever go any other way. I don't know if we can go back to the days of news being a community service that had to be provided, that industry had to support. Mm-hmm. It would take probably an act of Congress.
Well, it has degraded the level of skepticism. And skepticism is as integral to journalism as it is to science. Absolutely. And it is at our peril that we disregard it and don't practice skepticism.
The question then becomes, is it the fault of the public for not demanding answers and not being skeptical enough? Is it that sort of cult personality issue, or we're willing to believe someone just because of who they are, or I mean, I would guess it's probably a lot of both sides of the issue. We're not making these demands. We want to be entertained, and there is obviously
seems to be a cycle.
Yeah, and I think people do get caught up in that. The real big news issue. I mean, a bomb going off at the Boston Marathon is obviously a big news issue, and people will text one another or call and say, "Hey, did you just hear about the bombing?" And so that's going to be a big news issue. But then we tend to stop our skepticism, and we stop asking questions, and as you said, the news just fell down. It just was. There were talking heads on there that were talking about things that made absolutely no sense whatsoever, and it was what's going on here? How did this all happen? I mean, hopefully people will look back at this and at least use it as kind of an example of what not to do. I can see journalism classes saying, is a textbook classic, what not to do with a big story.
Yes.
This is it.
It's those fast-breaking stories where it seems to fail.
This is
worst.
the modern-day Dewey defeats Truman. Or wait,
Right.
forgive me. No,
Yeah.
that was the Affordable Care Act. The CNN got it wrong. We have stripped from our newsrooms our institutional knowledge. Those long-serving, highly paid, highly paid in terms of journalism. They're still, their kids still have incredible debt when they decide to go to college. But those higher paid, longer serving folks got forced out, bought out, pressured out. News is being committed by people who are far younger than I am, who don't have, not to say that you can't be young and good, but there is something to be said for somebody who lived through the New Deal so they can understand the relevance of why you don't want to call something a New Deal if it's not exactly from an earlier piece of legislation that was literally called the New Deal. You don't have people going, "Oh, yeah, wait, now which one was World War II? You don't have people in a newsroom who, when the internet goes down because a phone line goes out and that's the one serving your building, who go, "Well, I don't know how to reach anybody. You don't have the institutional knowledge, and it goes back to education again. Americans don't understand the way their government works. We come out of high school and we kind of remember there's something about checks and balances, and then we can sing a Schoolhouse Rock song about a bill on Capitol Hill, and that's much of the government we know. Now, I'm not talking about you if this is what you've studied and you understand and you're an exception to this, but when you ask how many justices sit on the U.S. Supreme Court, the average American can't give you the number 9. When you ask, okay, well, name the last 2 states admitted to the Union.
Yeah.
It's like
in my lifetime, actually.
Yeah, mine too. Yeah.
What union of? When you ask, okay, name a female scientist. Name a female scientist.
Yeah.
Most people can, but then they want to tell you about the latest diet that they saw on Dr. Whoever's show, and they're only going to juice their foods, and that's going to let their bodies heal, and and they're going to take this particular supplement that is going to burn fat, and you go, hold on, wait a minute. Okay, so you drink this stuff and it helps you to like breathe in and out more, and your respiration increases, so you lose fat. Did you ever take a science class? What does respiration do in the human body?
Yeah.
I mean,
how
breathe
does
out
that-
fat. So we have all of this stuff that we consume. We watch this. We open magazines and we see celebrities, who are just beautiful, and they go, "Oh, I follow Dr. Guru," and then you go, "Okay, well, I'm going to do the same thing," and we are just in a bigger tent nowadays. P.T. Barnum said it best about somebody and his money. But unfortunately, this is the world we live in, and so much of our news and our information are prettied up and sexied up and sold and packaged, and we lose sight of the need to just have plain fact.
I think it's important whenever you hear something that sounds either outrageous or too good to be true, that you ask, is that really true? And the one that gets me, the commercial that gets me, is the one with the 25 pounds of spackle in your intestines. Have you heard that?
Oh, no.
I got to ask myself, is that true?
Is it? Yeah,
I think
spackle.
not.
Man, that could be the problem. But and there is this blurring too of news and not so much news. In the morning shows kind of go from morning news into a cooking demonstration and talking about somebody's new book or something that's come up controversial. And again, that those minor steps you might be missing, that, well, when did I leave the news and get into this new realm of we're not talking facts anymore?
Right.
And that mindset of I thought we were still doing the news. And
But
it's not true.
it's not just in the news or in science, it's also in our daily lives. Skepticism is what will keep you from being ripped off, from being just stolen from. James Randi wrote the book Flim Flam, and I suggest to anybody who hasn't read that is as good a primer as there is for skepticism. And that'll get you started on the road, and it will make you ask
I
those
know
obvious
you
questions.
say that you love me, and the only reason you're not coming from Canada to visit me is that you're caring for your dying mom. And I know that we're in this deep, meaningful relationship online here, but how do I know you're you?
Yeah.
That's another thing. How do I know that? Yes, we'll be married and live together, and we'll never have any problems, because you can't have problems with people you never actually meet and just send loving texts to all day. But we need to do a better job of teaching. Period. You've got to ask how. You've got to ask why. It's not a bad thing to say, "Show me." It's not offensive or out of line to say, "Do it again.
Yeah.
Let me look closer this time."
It helps make you an atheist. Skepticism creates atheists.
Oh, tell me about it.
And if I can say something here, we got about 5 minutes left. You wanted to talk about the
there's the conference coming up. It's Women in Secularism Conference here in D.C., which is great. And Jamila will be on a panel there as well. Tell us a little bit about the panel you're going to be on.
The one I'm on is Women Leaving Religion. I'm working on a book right now, forever. I statistically do not exist. A black woman who will use the word atheist. There are so few of us. Black women out-tithe every other demographic there is. Black women have the least amount of wealth of every other demographic that we measure in this country. And frankly, to depart from the tradition of being authentically black and God-fearing is pretty much social suicide. Some of us don't care. But a lot of us do, and some are tethered or wishing to leave, but the condemnation of family and friends and society and culture and close culture is enough to keep folks inside. So I'm going to be on a panel with Vicki Garrison, who runs the blog No Longer Quivering. She's awesome. Also Teresa McBain, who came out at last year's American Atheist Convention. She was a pastor of a Florida church, and admitted to the world. You only have to admit when you're atheist. You don't have to admit when you're Jewish or Christian or
and that was as dramatic a moment as I've ever seen at one of those conventions.
Oh, it was. I mean, I'm not a crier, but there was wet stuff falling from my eyes. It was really.
Yeah,
she was one of
the earliest members of the Clergy Project that we started. It was exciting for all of us. Those of us who had been a part of that project. And it's ongoing.
We got 20 or 30 minutes of footage talking to her at the convention, which we hope to have on here.
Yeah. No, she's terrific. Teresa's terrific, and it should be exciting. And you know, there's a lot of issues about women in secularism and as a minority, and some of the issues that women face differently. Of course, my approach has always been from an evolutionary perspective, and talking about women tending to be more socially tied because we're the ones that bear the greatest cost of raising offspring, and we're the ones who can't have a lot of offspring. We're limited to the number of offspring we can have, and having our offspring being part of the social network is incredibly important for our reproductive success. And so religion offers something, it offers something for women, especially women of poverty, things like free daycare, a family network, instant family, you know, some people who can help out when times are bad. and particularly in the Black community, religion the churches played a huge role, and women played a huge role in the early civil rights movements, and church was the one place where Blacks could congregate without harassment. Absolutely. And so the church was used to help with the civil rights movement, which is, even though atheists were also very strongly involved in the civil rights movement, that tends to be forgotten. Yes. And it was actually purposely forgotten because there was that whole God and communism, and being an atheist was communist, and the idea was for the civil rights, we need to make sure we fit in with American society. And so I mean, that's a whole other show right there. Talking. I would love to talk about that because it's a fascinating subject. And again, very few people know that history that I've spoken to, and it's a fascinating. But unfortunately, our time is up. It's gone so quickly, and we're so glad to have you on the show, and we'd love to have you back.
We will have you back.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you.
And by the way, I can name a female scientist, Dr. Elizabeth Cornwell. One of the three people in this room is a female scientist. Oh, yes. And so we're just about out of time. Look for us on Facebook. We're on there. On YouTube, Road to Reason. Facebook, Road to Reason. Send us a question. Maybe we can get it on the air. See you next time.
Bye.